from Waikanae Beach in New Zealand. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Portrait Letters podcast number 2550. Yes. And guess what? Before we get to 2560, we're going to pass the end of year 7 and begin year 8. If my calculations are correct, I think that's what it is. Anyway, and we're going to be doing a special show as well. So tonight we are the question we are answering is, and I'm so happy that this question came up for today. Where was your family when they moved into their first home together? Think back. Where was their first home together? What was the date or the season? What did their home look like? What changes or projects did they take on? What do they remember about moving in? Got a funny story about that one today. And who helped them move or celebrate with them? So moving into a home. So it's Sunday here in the States. I mean, in New Zealand. Where am I? I'm in New Zealand. It's Sunday here. It's Saturday in the States. But and so my parents came and picked me up this morning. We went to church. We went back to their place and had yummy homemade pumpkin soup with sourdough toast. Absolutely best lunch to have on a Sunday. And it was a cold day too. It's been a cold day, so it's been nice to have some nice hot soup for lunch. It was awesome. But then afterwards, we just got talking and going. Well, actually, it all started because we're going to Palmerston North tomorrow. Palmerston North is the city I was born in, and it's Monday here. It's my day off. And so we're going to go up Palmerston North and go to one of the thrift stores there and drop off my bag of clothing. And so then also like, what do you want to see and do? Well, I want to go see my grandparents' house. I want to see the house that mum and dad first lived in, their first home, the home that my first home as well, the home that I was brought home to from the hospital. Apparently the hospital has now demolished the building where the nursery was and the waiting room was, because I remember we went and visited a friend of mum and dad's years ago, and we come in the side door and my mum says, that's the waiting room. And it had father's waiting room. He said, that's where your dad waited while I was giving birth to you. And then we walked out into the hallway, and across the hallway, there were these little side rooms with these window areas on them. She says, these are where people could come and view the babies. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And we walked into the room and she goes, this was the old nursery. And that sunroom over there is where we would put the jaundice babies, so they would get the natural sunlight. And this was now a ward where the friend of mum and dad's were that we were going to go and visit. And then later on, she pointed out the window and said, see that room up there? That's the room that you and I were moved to because mum was a nurse at that hospital. And when the matron found out that one of her sisters one of her nurses had been in the hospital giving birth and was on the general ward, she moved her into a private room up there. Now that building's gone, but I have that memory of being able to visit that place. And when they left there, they then took us to their first home that they had owned. They were renting a place prior to that. We're going to see if we can find that place tomorrow too. We're not sure if it's still going to be there. We're going to go and check it out. And then Dad mentioned a street that he lived on when he was in town, and he lived he had a caravan out front, and there were some rooms inside that were boarded, that they had boarders in as well. And we're talking about the cake can, the biscuit tin that was full of sandwiches that Dad got given every day for work. I forgot to ask him what work he was doing at the time. But anyway, and then I got the story about how when they moved into their first home, and it was a very quick move in due to a rat. Yes, a rat. They had a rat that lived in the wall of the place that they were living in when they first got married. And Dad went in, and he had to go in several paces to hit the light switch, and goes in and hits the light switch, and this rat runs up his trouser and back down again. So they decided there and then they had the loan of a friend's two-seater sports car, somehow got a mattress into that, and Dad drove it over to their new house. They'd just picked up the keys for their new house that day, and Mum followed on her scooter. I forgot to ask, did you take bedding? Did you take clothing? Anything like that? They slept on the floor of their living room, no curtains on the windows. The next day up, newspaper was put up on the windows. And I think they said that my grandmother, Mum's mum, sewed them some curtains. But that was their first night in their new home. So that was a real cool, funny story to go with it. But we're sitting there laughing away. And then from there, I just rolled into other stories, and I just started asking questions as topics came up. They would mention something, and I go, well, hang on, go back to that. And then they were talking about their engagement notice, and Dad says, I think we still have that. So he goes and gets this box out, and he opens the box and starts going through things. And then he comes over and he opens up this newspaper article, which was about this long. And I'm looking at the back of it and I go, hang on, it's got something about Waitara Radio on there. And Waitara is the town that we lived in for my teenage years, the longest place in New Zealand I have ever lived. I lived there for 6 years. And where I did all my high school and all of that. And so Mum then turns around the article and shows it to me. And of course, I'm looking, what are the dates on this thing? There's no, they cut out the article, but no dates. And it was about the Age Concern concert. Now, when I was in high school, I was part of the school choir. I was in on the Age Concern thing, because what we would do is every year, it was either once or twice a year, we would put on a concert for the Age Concern, basically the senior community. It was called Age Concern, and it was for the seniors. And it was they had a hall downtown in Waitara, and we would go down there and put on a show for them, a variety show. It was the Waitara High School variety show is what it was, and we had things from tap dancers to pianists to soloists to group things to dancing. And this article, like I'm reading through this article and I found myself in the photograph very quickly. And I'm like looking, seeing who else I know in the photograph. There's a couple of people that I knew and others, the faces were familiar, but I couldn't put names to them. And then I started reading this article and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I remember, and I looked at the bottom picture and I went, oh, that's Judy. And she's singing All I Want Is a Room Somewhere from My Fair Lady. And Dad says, yeah, that's what it says under the photo at the bottom. And I then had a look and went, oh yeah, it does too. And I said, I hadn't even seen that. I said, I just recognized the costume from when she did that. And she was a fantastic pianist and a fantastic singer. And then I'm reading through this article and like it mentioned that I did this dance here, I did a dance here, I did a dance there. And then it mentioned that I was the choreographer for most of the dance sequences that we did. And I'm like, dang, I did a lot of dancing thing. And then they mentioned we did Dolly Parton's Love is Like a Butterfly and how there was 3 of us. And the 2 girls I was working with were girls that I actually coached in gymnastics at the time and became very good friends with. And we were all in different colored leotards, different colored tights. We had these wings that went from our wrist down to our waist that we would flutter around on stage with. And I was like, oh, I'd totally forgotten we did that. So this, for me, was a very good trip down memory lane. All started with what do I want to go and see when we're in Palmerston North, and starting with the first house that my parents owned in Palmerston North. And it was their very first time that they owned it. All went back to that, and it led on to all these other stories and everything else. And we were talking about, you know, the places that I remembered and stuff. And they go, well, that's gone. I'm like, what? And I said, don't we go down Church Street to the church that you got married in? And they said, no, that's whatever it is. They said, we got married on Cuba Street, and it's and it was the Trinity Church, which is no longer there. I said, they took down the church and you guys got married? And they said, yeah. And I went, well, that's not good. And I said, didn't they take down the Opera House? Because Palmerston North had this amazing opera house. Absolutely loved going and seeing shows there. Got to see a lot of shows there when I was growing up. Thanks to my parents and my grandparents being part of the Palmerston North Operatic Society. They got, you know, like, it was one of those things where you get advance tickets and all that sort of stuff. And we saw, we're talking about it today, there was My Fair Lady, there was Dick Whittington, the pantomime Dick Whittington and His Cat. We got to see dance competitions in there going during the school holidays when they had dance competitions, and see all of the heats that led up to the semifinals. And we didn't get to see the finals. We just saw the quarterfinals and the semifinals. What else? I saw Joseph Lee Maz in Technicolor Dreamcoat. First time I'd seen my favorite stage actor, Rob Guest, on stage. Absolutely loved him in that. He came back a year or 2 later and did Half a Sixpence, and he was the main character in that. And got to see him in that. What other ones did we see? We saw My Fair Lady. Oh, so many that we saw. There's one that has a Showboat. That's one I was trying to think of today. I keep putting button. It was like Showboat. We saw Showboat as well. And they had this big paddle steamer on the back of the stage, set up on, you know, not the whole thing, but on the back of the stage there. So a lot of great things in there. And they actually tore down the Opera House at one point back in the 1990s. But somebody had the foresight to keep the foundation stone. So now they've put the foundation stone back on the original site and have it all, went back on the original site. I think it was last year. And so we're going to stop by and see that, because my mum has memories of going to shows there when she was a kid as well. So a bit of reminiscing. So we're going to go look at these places tomorrow, places that we've lived, visited, that sort of thing. What else are we going to go see? Oh, we're going to go to thrift stores as well. I love op shops. Absolutely love them. I got this sweater here that I'm wearing. This jersey, this sweater. I got it for $5. can't beat the deal. It's in great condition. It fits perfectly. It's a smaller size. The t-shirt underneath is a little big, so I'm going to see if I can find some t-shirts. And one of the places that one of the op shops we're going to go to is called Highbury House. This thing has been around for eons. The story with Highbury House is my nana, my mum's mum, used to volunteer for Highbury House, and it is a thrift store. I cannot remember who they supported or anything else like that, but I do remember times going there. My nana would sit behind the counter and she was a seamstress by trade, and she would do handwork, like hand sewing, ripping seams apart on stuff that came into the store, and she would do repairs and that sort of thing to make them ready to be sold. My sister from another mother, the same thing I can think of to call her, Marie, her and I would go around and we would tidy up the shop and go along the racks and make sure all the mediums were together, all the smalls were together and that sort of stuff, making sure the sizes were grouped together properly. At times we did get to help behind the counter and actually cash somebody out, but there's a lot of memories holding that, and we found out it's still in operation today. So we're actually going to go stop by there tomorrow and have a look at it and go in and just wander around. And my mum says, I don't think I've ever been there. And I said, oh, Nana used to take Marie and I there all the time when she was volunteering. And so my mother doesn't recall ever being there. So we'll see if any memories. It'll be interesting to see how it's changed over the years, because I was thinking, that's back when we were living in Fielding, and we left Fielding when I was 11, and I'm going to be 60 this year. Do the math. So it's been a long time since I've been in Highbury House. So I'm curious to go back and see that. But that all started with talking about the story of their first house. We just got moving the mattress in so they could sleep there that night without the rat, because the rat had gotten out of the wall. But they were having good laughs about that. And then they started going through this box and we started finding different things. We found my dad's baby book. And I said, my dad's 82 and it's in really good condition. And we're looking at when he did his first smile, when he stood on his own, they didn't call it crawling, they called it creeping. He was creeping across the floor. There was no crawling, it was creeping. Interesting. Maybe creeping's before crawling, and we had to look at the list. Nope, crawling was not on there. It was creeping, and then it was standing and walking or something like that, but there was no crawling on there. My mum's, and there was a photo there of my mum when she was a nurse. Beautiful photograph. Got the story behind that photograph as well. There was just lots and lots of stuff. And I said, I need to come back over here at some point with my archival pencil, because we were pulling out photographs and my mum was telling me who was in them. And there were photos of my papa with his sister and his parents and their parents. There's a photo of the four of them together, which I had never seen before. So there were photographs in there I had never seen before. And I got to see pictures of relatives I never got to know because they had passed before I came along. And so to be able to put their names just on the back of the photographs. I said, I got to come over here and on time we can go through this and record it. So they've been prepped that it's going to be recorded, and go through this and, show the photographs on the video and write on the back who's in those photographs, approximately when it was taken, if we can figure that out, and that sort of stuff too. So I'm super excited about that. But back. So see what happens when you start talking one topic and how easily it can go to different ones. And I even asked them, because of the time, I even told them the podcast I've done the other day, I said, like, yesterday was I do, the day before was the proposal, the day before that was the first date. And so I got little bits of those stories along the way as well. But you can start with a topic and it just naturally flows into another topic. And of course, it started with, I get to go visit the first house that I ever lived in, which happened to be the first house I had purchased. And so moving into a first home together is more than unpacking boxes. It's the moment two lives begin building a place to call their own. That first home may have been a tiny flat, a rented cottage, a farmhouse, or a brand new house with empty rooms waiting to be filled. It probably wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was the place where new routines began, dreams were shared, and the future started taking shape one day at a time. Every first home has its own memories. There were boxes stacked in every room, furniture collected from family and friends, meals eaten, sitting on the floor before the dining table arrived, the walls waiting to be decorated. Every little improvement made the house feel more like home. Many of life's biggest moments happened within those walls. It may have been where their first Christmas was celebrated together, where children took their first steps. Nope, but they brought their first baby home. Me. Where birthdays were shared, or where friends gathered around a kitchen table. The address may have changed over the years, but the memories made there stayed with the family forever. These days, these everyday milestones are just as important as the official records we collect. A first home tells tells us how a family began building a life together and often becomes the backdrop for stories that are passed from one generation to the next. Your challenge, and I'm going to emphasize, if it leads in different directions, don't keep coming back to that one. Just let the conversation flow. Ask a family member about the first home they shared together. Where was it? What did it look like? What was the first piece of furniture they bought? What memories make them smile whenever they think about the house? Record their story today, because every family has a place where the next chapter truly began. And let us know in the comments below some of the stories that you uncover along the way. And your conversation may go in different directions. You may start asking them about the first house, which is what I did, because I got them to tell the story about the rat up Dad's trouser leg. It's one we've heard over the years, and it always makes me laugh. And we were having a good laughing time on that one. And from there, it just snowballed to asking other questions about things as we're preparing to go up to Palmerston North tomorrow and go for a trip down memory lane is basically what we're going to be doing. So there's going to be a lot of stories shared tomorrow, which I'm really looking forward to. Plus, I get to see the first house my parents owned, which is the house they brought me home into. And I'm the only child out of the three of us that got to live in that house with them. So I'm looking forward to, and they said, oh, they've made it bigger. I said, well, last time I saw the house, it had like the original piece, and then there was like this piece of board that went up the side or something, and that was the addition that they added on. Have they added on since then? So we'll get to have a look tomorrow and check that out. But I'll also get to go past my grandparents' house. It's the house where my mum and her sisters grew up in. I'm not sure what age my mum was when they moved into that house. But from that house, there's been a lot of memories in there, a lot of memories in that house. Both my grandparents were still living in the house when they passed, although my grandfather passed in the hospital and my grandmother passed. Oh, no, she had moved out of the house and was in assisted living at the time when she passed. So, but that house that we're going to go drive past tomorrow has been in my life for a lot. It was in my life for a lot of years. I spent time over the years at that place, visiting my grandparents. So it's a house that in fact, it's the only house I have ever known them to live in. Because that's true. They basically lived there my entire life up until when they passed. So I have a lot of memories of that house. But it will be fun going for trips down memory lanes tomorrow and checking out some op shops too. So who knows what we'll find, what we'll come home with, but it's going to be a fun trip and I'm looking forward to it. So with that, we're out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow at some time, because I don't know what time we're going to be home. Depending on when we come back, we may stop at RJ Candies on the way home. RJ's is one of the big candy sellers here in New Zealand. They have a factory shop in one of the towns that we're actually going to be coming back through. And I said to Mum and Dad, I said, I'd rather stop there on the way home than on the way back, because if we don't have time to do it on the way home, it doesn't matter. We can do it another time. And my mum said, why do you want to go there and get just candy and stuff? And I was like, because they have really good candy, and I have my little candy jar and I'll fill that up and I get a couple of pieces a day and that's it. I'm being very strict about how much candy I get to eat each day, and chocolate. And chocolate came up in the church service today. It was absolutely hilarious. Because me being a big chocoholic, sitting there, and as the pastor's going through the steps of this guy avoiding chocolate and what he does to try and introduce chocolate without actually eating it into this thing, I'm sitting there and I'm going, yeah, that's not going to work with me. No, that's not going to work with me. I actually got told by a gastroenterologist one time that there was stuff going on with my digestive system that was caused from the stress of Bray going through the first 18 months of cancer. And so I went in and had the endoscope done. He told me what was going on in my stomach, and I'd have to be on the little purple pill. I said, how long am I going to be on that for? He says, for life. And I'm thinking, absolutely not. And then he was going through and then he gave me a list of foods I had to avoid, and one of them was chocolate. I said, well, that's not going to work. He goes, what's that? I said, chocolate. I'm a chocoholic. There is no way that I'm missing out on chocolate. He says, then you'll definitely be on this medication for the rest of your life. I was off it 18 months later. Yeah, wasn't staying on that stuff. And I was determined. I was getting off that thing, and I've been off it ever since. Never had any of the stomach issues that I had back then, coming with the adrenaline drop, the stress and everything else dropping away, and the body changing things. But it was interesting. But anyway, I'm out of here. Go out and have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow at some point, depending on when I get home. Yes, that's going to be the big thing, when I get home. Although I may do little lives little short lives throughout the day as we visit different places, and then we tell you the stories behind them. So keep an eye out for those, or we may just record them and do some editing or something later on. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. We may do some live and some recorded. We'll see. But have a super fantastic sparkling evening.